Hello. In this session, we're going to talk about methods for engaging artists in your church so that more people are contributing to the worship and witness of your church or your ministry context, whatever that context may be. In order to do that, I'm going to combine two things into one. I'm going to give you a case study from Siberia about the use of ethnodoxology in missions. It's my own personal story. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of a method of arts and scripture engagement called creating local arts together. In English, we call this CLAT. I'm going to combine those two things, the story and the method of arts engagement, because this process is not just a cross-cultural process. It can work in any community where you serve. Each of these steps is actually a conversation. Each of the steps in the CLAT process is a conversation that you have with a local community. This is not 7 steps that you do by yourself. It's 7 kinds of conversations that can help you move a community toward engaging their arts through scripture. So we're going to do this session in a hear a little, do a little manner. So I'm going to tell you a story, you'll listen and you'll hear, and then we're going to stop the video and you will get to practice it in your groups. So I will give more instructions as we go along. So here's my story from Alaska to Siberia and how I discovered ethnodoxology. I was born in California and I spent my early childhood there. But when I was 11, my parents moved to Alaska to serve as missionaries there. So I consider my home culture to actually be Alaskan. And Alaska is a culture, by the way, not just a place in the United States. I loved growing up in Alaska. I always had gorgeous mountains nearby. There was ice skating and hiking in the woods, which were right outside our home. I had no idea that God was preparing me for the future that He had for me. I especially loved riding horses. My friends had horses that I got to ride, as long as I didn't mind cleaning out their barn, their stalls. I didn't know at the time that even hobbies like horseback riding were God's preparation for my future ministry. Most of all, I loved music. My parents, who were basically poor missionaries, sacrificed a lot of time and money to make sure that I had piano lessons in Anchorage, which was about an hour and a half away from where we lived. In the small high school that I attended in Palmer, Alaska, I was thought of as a music person. So music was a huge part of my life, but missions were too, as my life as a missionary kid soon led me to realize that I wanted to do missions the rest of my life. The only problem was that I couldn't figure out how to put the two parts of my life together, music and missions. This was one of the big dilemmas of my young years. Eventually, after high school, I went to Los Angeles to attend a Christian liberal arts college there, Biola University, and to study music. Moving to Los Angeles was hard for me because I experienced really bad culture shock there. I hated that I could not find a quiet place to walk like my home in Alaska. The hardest thing of all that I was studying classical music, but I wanted to serve as a missionary, and I had not figured out how to put those two pieces of my life together. It was the hardest thing to keep on practicing piano when I didn't see how that was going to be useful in my future ministry. I ended up persevering, and I finished my performance degree. And along the way, I met Bill Harris, a Los Angeles boy, and I married him in my junior year, so that was a good thing. After graduating, we moved back to Alaska to serve there as missionaries. with the same agency as my parents. They specialized in Northern cultures. Once again, I got to be near my beloved mountains. But I didn't get to use my music much. I taught local piano lessons to missionary kids. I played for my church. But the church didn't have many Alaska Natives in it, and the division between music and missions in my life remained one of my biggest problems. In the mid-1990s, our lives changed forever when we moved to Russia to serve as church planters on a Russian church planting team for our agency. Some of you will recognize the Aeroflot plane behind us. That's a Russian airline. And this is us with our kids right before boarding the plane to leave for Russia. Our move to Russia moved me from a classical musician who happened to be a missionary toward a new world in which the two loves of my life were going to be integrated. I discovered the world of ethnodoxology and ethno arts. So that's my background. What is this CLAT word all about? What's creating local arts together? Well, the 7 conversations or steps that I'm going to tell you about today, the creating local arts together steps, have a core of being with people, having conversations, listening and talking, working together with people in community. So I wanted to talk a little bit before I start in on the first step. I would like to talk about what are the foundations of scripture that we use for this method. The foundations are in Philippians 2, because the incarnation of Christ provides a model for us, whether we're working in the inner city or a suburb or any ministry context where we are crossing cultures. So the 3 parts of Jesus's incarnation show how we should do mission. And in fact, let's take a look at that passage together, Philippians chapter 2, starting in verse 5. I'll read it to you. It says, "You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross." So in this passage, we see that he, first of all, came to be with us. He left his home culture with God the Father and joined humanity in Palestine on earth. So our first task in mission is to live with people in community and to make relationships. The second thing that Jesus did that we see in this passage is that he learned from us. He learned from human beings in his Palestinian community for almost 30 years before he began his full ministry. So our second interaction with people as arts facilitators is to ask people about their community's arts and their goals. We show them love by learning from them. This process may happen over a long time. The third thing that Jesus did was that only after, the first step of being with humans and learning from them for 3 decades, then he announced and fulfilled his purpose publicly by working side by side with his disciples toward the goals of his kingdom. So he healed and he taught, he exorcised demons, he rebuked and comforted, affirmed people, he endured torture and ridicule. He died, he was resurrected, and he sent his people to preach about his kingdom all over the world. So our third missional activity, after going to people and learning from them, is to work toward our goals, their goals, with them. As arts facilitators, we do this by exploring all we can learn about their arts and how they might work together to meet their goals. In this way, we show people love And remember that research equals love equals ministry. So we're never wasting time if we're learning from people. So here it is again, be with people, learn from them about their arts and goals, engage with them about their arts toward the goal of meeting their needs. And if you don't remember anything else from this talk, this is the main thing. Be with, learn from, and work toward. But of course, 3 steps is way too easy. So we have expanded it into these 7 steps, these 7 conversations that we call the CLAT process. It's a way of showing love. So here we go. These are the 7 conversations that allow us to work with people in communities. We call them steps, but they're actually conversations. And they flow kind of logically around the circle, steps 1 through 7, but in real life, it sometimes can be a little more complicated than that. You can skip around. But this session will be an introduction to these 7 steps. It's just an hour and a half long, but there's a whole workshop that actually teaches you how to do this in great detail. So I hope that someday you will be able to have that workshop, Arts for a Better Future. So let's move to the first step, which is called Meet a Community and its Arts. CLAT step number 1. Okay, so I will tell you the story about how I met the Sakha community and its arts, and then we'll give you a chance to practice in your groups. So first of all, I just want you to divide up into pairs or discussion groups of 2 to 3 people. I would like for you to introduce yourselves to one another if you don't know each other well. And I would like for you to talk about the communities that are represented in your group and choose a community that you're going to focus on, one person's community that you're going to focus on for this session, okay? Your community representative that's, one of your small group should know a lot about the arts of that community so that they can represent them to the rest of the group. We're going to give you some time now to break up into groups, introduce yourselves, choose one of the communities that you're going to focus on for this session. You can break up into groups now. So, thank you for your work. I hope that you've chosen a good community that will be interesting for you, and I think you'll learn a lot more about these steps as you practice in your groups. Here is my story about what I did in step 1, meeting a community and its arts. First of all, here's a little bit of background about Yakutia, which is the place that we went to serve. Yakutia is the largest republic in Russia. If it was a country, it would be the 8th largest country in the world by land mass. Approximately 1 million people live in this republic. About half of them are Sakha, that's the minority group, and the other half are Russians that inhabit all of the rest of Russia. The number of Sakha people is actually growing larger as Russians leave this part of the world to go back to warmer places in Western Russia, and as the Sakha birth rate rises. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, Yakutia is the coldest inhabited city on Earth. It averages about 50 below zero in the winter, but it can reach 50 below each year. And the record is about 70 or 80 below in a town north of Yakutsk. That's 90 below in Fahrenheit. But as I began to study Russian language and culture, I learned to dress warmly, and I learned about the values and the ways of interacting that are important to the people of Yakutia. We raised our 2 children there. This picture was taken when I was walking to my kids' swimming class. And yes, my children learned to swim in Yakutia at an indoor pool. When we first arrived, almost everyone used public transportation, buses that were both large and small. So we never had a car during the decade we lived there, but you learn a lot about culture and language by using public transportation. So we did a lot of waiting at bus stops in the cold. This is one of the central bus stops in town, and you can see the habitation fog, which means that it's somewhere right around 40 below zero. Like I said, this is the average temperature during the winter months. This particular year in Yakutia was a very cold year. Since the middle of December, it has been colder than 40 below every single day. That's almost 2 months. And it went down to colder than minus 50 Celsius on many days. So it's been horribly cold in Yakutia for the last 2 months. The capital city of Yakutsk, where we lived, is about 250,000 people. It has some high-rise buildings that go clear up to 10 stories. Typical of many post-Soviet towns in Siberia, the central square in town is called Lenin Square. And here's what it looked like during the New Year's season about a decade ago. The White House that you see on the right is the government offices. On the ice hill in front of it is for ice sliding, which our children love to do. Those are pictures from the city, but this is a common village view with log houses and animals wandering around. They have a very hardy horse, the Sakha horse, that lives out in the cold all winter. It digs beneath the snow for the food that keeps them alive. The Sakha highly value their horses. They use their hides, they eat their meat, they drink fermented mare's milk that they call kumus. They are considered a sacred animal in some ways and are used for rituals and for horse racing. My daughter and I, Catherine, used to ride when we lived there, and Sakha people really liked that we loved to ride their horses. And in fact, it helped me to understand why the Lord had given me that experience in my own childhood. The Sakha are the largest indigenous minority in Russia. They have recently surpassed the Buryat in numbers. They have a Turkic-based language, and they are the farthest north Turkic-speaking people. They are, in fact, the only non-Muslim Turkic group. So they're related to other Central Asian groups, such as the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks and the Altaic peoples. Their language has a lot of Mongolian mixed in from the time of Genghis Khan. And they were pushed north from southern Siberia to Lake Baikal and on beyond further north to Yakutia many, many, many centuries ago. Their religious beliefs have traditionally been animistic, though there was a period in Yakutia's history when the Russian Orthodox Church baptized most Sakha and gave them Russian names. I've heard estimates that there are now probably around 600 Sakha believers, but that's not many. That's out of almost 500,000 people. So they are definitely an unreached people group. The Sakha are highly hospitable. They are very welcoming to Americans and other foreigners. I wonder if perhaps this is the reason why they have survived as a people. Their willingness to adapt and to work with foreigners while maintaining their distinctives has been a big help to them. When we arrived, the small gathered congregation of the first church, which is what it was called in town, was mostly Russian. In the last 20 years, this church has grown to multiple sites and congregations, including the church that we helped to plant, which was a multi-ethnic church. And then the daughter church from that church, which is all Sakha. Part of getting to know the community is making friends. So we made friends with Sakha musicians and Bible translators and pastors. This woman was the main consultant for the translation of the New Testament into Sakha. We also made friends with artists of all kinds. One of those friends was Maria, a prolific poetess. She writes poetry. When I was writing my doctoral dissertation for 2 summers, we traveled with our husbands, and did research on the Sakha epic song poem called Alan Ho. And I wrote my doctoral dissertation and later a book about Sakha epic storytelling. But Maria was a good friend. She helped me to learn much about Sakha genres and was always encouraging me about the use of Sakha arts in the church. So after you get to know your community and make friends with a few of its artists, a very good early project for you to do is to make a community arts list. There are lots of ways to do this, but this chart is one way to do it, and I've given that to you in a handout. This will provide information to help the community see what kinds of artistic communication resources they have, so that they can make decisions later on about which of these resources they can draw on to spark creativity. So it helps them to compare genres that are most likely to have good effects and to choose the ones that are really beloved. If there are no practitioners, so no people that can perform that genre, or if they only have bad connotations for the people, those are probably not going to be the genres that they choose. So there's the blank chart. There's a brief overview of a few interesting Sakha genres. First of all, there's a hokai. That's a round dance at the summer festival. A hokai is primarily an oral verbal art. It is not really just music or just dance, although it includes both of those. You can also see their national dress that has headdresses and hats and beading and silver, has fur. Also behind them, you can see the wood-carved serge, it's called. It's a horse hitching pole. It's full of meaning and it signifies important events or people for them. They also have a choreographed kind of dance and music that is very rhythmic. It's called degeren. And they have the chamus, a national instrument, that is very, very fun to listen to. You can see here in this example, she's playing the chamus, and you can see the headdress that she's wearing as well, made out of silver. Alanjo is their epic song story and improvised poetry genre. That's the one that I studied especially. There's also wood carving. You can see the Sharon vessel on the table there. The table is actually carved. You can even see carvings on the wall behind the singer. There's also a tayuk, which is an improvised praise song, very, very traditional genre. So we had all kinds of genres and cultural expressions to choose from, including things like popular music genres like rock and rap and Sakha pop music. So as you start filling out your chart, you can put in facts and the descriptions of the genres for evaluation. It's important not to just put your own opinion. You really want to just put what you know for sure. So for this exercise, we'll be comparing a reduced number of genres, the ones that are most likely to have good effects, things that are popular or beloved and are very practical. So now here's time for you to work in your groups. I've told you my story about how I met the community and its arts. Now it's time for you to practice with your community representative. If you haven't done it already, you need to make a community arts list for your community. And if you've chosen a community representative in your group, I would like for you to help that community representative to think more broadly. Make them explore genres that maybe they haven't thought of, especially in the areas you can see there in the second point. Be sure to explore various kinds of visual arts, dramatic arts, digital arts, food arts, oral verbal arts like storytelling and poetry of all kinds. So explore your community representatives' arts, get as big a list as you can, and then we'll come back together and talk about the next step. I'll give you some time to do that. All right, so we have finished step number 1, meet a community and its arts, and now we're on to specify kingdom goals. All right, specify kingdom goals. CLAT step number 2. Here is my story. So kingdom goals, that means something to do with faith, right? Or if you're in a community where you can't do specifically religious-oriented goals, you can do people's goals for a better future. What would they imagine as a better future for them? In my context, I was able to think about kingdom goals. And so that brings us to talking about the church. The officially sanctioned religion in Russia is the Russian Orthodox Church. This is a famous cathedral in St. Petersburg, where we also lived for many years. This is the Russian Orthodox Church in Yakutsk. But the Sakha people think of the Russian Orthodox Church and Christianity as part of as a religion of the oppressors, because it's so identified with ethnically Russian people who have really marginalized them and persecuted them for many years. So Sakha don't think it's possible to be Sakha and Christian. The model of a Protestant or contextualized Christianity is something that they are not used to seeing. They're used to thinking of Christian means Russian Orthodox. So the Protestant Church of the Gospel Way, which was the name of our church, that we planted with a multinational team of Russians and Ukrainians and Belarusians, was different than anything the Sakha people had seen before. The worship styles of the Slavic people that were helping us to be church planters really dominated the church practice at the beginning. We used guitar, sometimes piano accompaniment, mostly Russian hymns, some translated from the West, some Russian in origin. But at the beginning, none of those songs were in Sakha styles. Very slowly, they began to write songs in Sakha, but still mostly in Russian styles. But as I worked with them to discover their hopes and dreams for the future, I learned that because of the history of Russian domination in every area of cultural expression, including the church, the Sakha Christians decided that the most important kingdom goal for them was identity related. They wanted to provide a model for Sakha people to be truly Sakha and Christian, to be able to express their identity as Sakha Christians in a way that didn't look Russian. That's what they really wanted. So their kingdom goal was to develop stronger Sakha Christian identity. So your task is to look at the list of kingdom goals that you have in your handout or in your book, and ask questions of your community representative to find out which goals might be a priority for the community that you've chosen to discuss. If you are the community representative, of course, you can answer on behalf of your community. The way that the CLAT method is done normally is that you consult a lot of different people in the community, but for practicing sake, we'll just have one community rep here. All right, you can do task number 2. I'll give you some time to do that. All right, step number 3, connect goals to artistic genres. This is step number 3 in the process. And in this step, we're looking at figuring out, we've got a kingdom goal decided, and we have a huge list of genres. We have all of these wonderful genres. Now it's time for the community to choose which one of their genres will connect to their kingdom goal. How do we connect their community's arts with the goal? That's the big question. So we have this big chart that we've filled out. It contains facts and descriptions of the genres for evaluation. Remember, it doesn't have opinions, just facts. And the key factor is feasibility or doability, or what is practical. Which genres do local people believe will help them to achieve their goal? So it has to be engaging, it has to be doable. So we think about events. Can it be used in the kind of events that will achieve the goal? We think about things like participants. Does it include the kinds of participants that help the right kind of people to engage? We think about things like connotations. Are the connotations or the kind of the meanings of this genre positive? Or can the meanings or the connotations be changed or altered in any way so that they're useful? We also think about effects. What kind of effects will it have on people that make it able to achieve the goal? In my case, we had the Bible in Saha, and this provides content for whatever we would create. It's an immediate and fruitful method of scripture engagement. So it was great that we had the New Testament. We got the New Testament in 2008, 2009, and since then they've translated Genesis and Psalms and Proverbs and Job. But some genres are not as good at containing content from the Bible. Like, for example, genres that don't have texts. And the Saha that I worked with really wanted to use these newly translated Saha texts. So they chose the Ahokai, the round dance, that has improvised and very complex, very beautiful poetry. So the Ahokai is participatory because it's call and response. So you listen to what the caller says and you just repeat after them. It's very useful for any kind of content, Saha cultural content, for biblical content. It's really easy to do because all you have to do is repeat, and the steps are very simple and the tune is very simple. The only person that has a hard job is the caller, and their job is very difficult. It didn't have any bad or spiritual pagan connotations, and it had the wonderful effect of bringing unity and joy and strengthening Saha identity. So they love this genre. They, in fact, say about this genre, when a Hokai disappears, our people will disappear. So this is a big, important genre for the Saha people. And it's easy to do. People just repeat what the caller says, and everybody can join in. When we thought about events, the Saha realized that they love festivals. This is an example of what a all-in-ho performance looks like at a summer festival. And since the festival allows for so many genres, the church people chose to plan a new song festival that would include an ahokai, a round dance, with other kinds of music and arts too. So this is the chart, and they chose ahokai. That was the one they chose. Okay, so now it's your turn. You are going to work with your community representative to connect your goals to the genre, the goals of the community to the genre. So task number 3 is to compare a reduced number of genres, the ones that are most likely to have good effects, those that are popular or beloved, those that are practical. Fill in as much as you can in your chart, and then choose a genre and an event to perform it in, and some kind of content that you would like to see put into that new creation. All right, I'll give you some time now to discuss that in your group. All right, we've done meet a community and its arts, specify kingdom goals, connect goals to artistic genres, and now we're on analyze artistic genres and events. So analyze whatever you need to do to make a good quality activity. So we had chosen the genre of a hokai, but we still knew very little about how to do an ahokai. So we began to learn together. I worked with Maria, the poet, to learn about Saha poetry. We also did interviews with just regular folks, asking them about their attitudes toward a hokai and how to do it well. The old people just loved it when I asked them questions about their arts. That made them feel very, very loved. I helped the Saha people to study the round dance, learned about left foot in, right foot out, and the importance of turning clockwise in the direction of the sun. Analysis is really important because if you don't know what the genre is supposed to look like, in the next step, the sparking step, you might be fostering the creation of arts that don't really fit the aesthetic norms of the genre. You might create something that just feels like it doesn't belong to that genre. So you want the creations to be good quality, and analysis helps you to do that. It also helps the people to know about the meanings that their culture has embedded in those forms. So here's your task number 4. Ask your community genre about the genre you've chosen. You can look at the list of 6 lenses that you have in your handout or your book and try to understand better the form and its meaning to the people in the community. So write down everything that you discover about this genre. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, we have analyzed the artistic genres and events, and now we're ready to spark creativity. Oh my. So spark creativity for kingdom impact. In my story, they had chosen for their sparking activity a Christian New Song Festival. They decided that it would include a hokai and all kinds of other arts. So another thing they did, though, was that they started an arts fellowship called Algus, which means blessing. And together, this arts fellowship, a group of men and women together, planned out the festival. They met as a group, they prayed for wisdom, they discussed ways to make it a really great festival. They passed out invitations, they rented a hall for a very large crowd, enough for 2,000 people. But at the last minute, the hall was canceled by the government, which was very anti-Christian. And at the last minute, they had to hold it in the church, which meant that there was not going to be enough room for everybody. The church ended up being packed with non-Christians. And so the Christians, except for the performers, all stayed home so that there would be room for the guests. It was an amazing, amazing event. My friend Irina took a lead role in emceeing the event and leading the event. She created a welcome song in the Tayuk or praise genre. She also led in a hokai at round dance on the 10 Commandments, but of course there was no room to actually do a round dance, so they had to sit in their seat and repeat after her. They made great efforts to sew beautiful, colorful national dress for all the participants, which really increased a sense of Saha identity. My husband, Bill, helped a local team to produce a DVD from the festival, and they created visual art and put it on the walls and created a set of greeting cards to sell. This is a Christmas card that they used to raise money for the event. The art is by a man named Christopher. So that was what we did for our sparking activity. It's time for you to do your task number 5 and choose your sparking activity for your group. So look at the list of sparking activities in your handout and talk with your community representative about what kind of sparking activity might the community choose that would encourage the creation of new examples of the chosen genre, infused with scripture. So what is also going to be the content? What content will achieve the effects on people that will help you reach the kingdom goal? Now is time for you to choose your sparking activity. Actually, you aren't going to choose it. The community representative is going to choose it. You can help ask questions to help the community representative decide what they're going to choose. I'll give you time to do that. All right, look at that. We've made it through 5 steps. We're on step number 6, improve the results. You want to improve the creations for maximum effectiveness. If you've done a good job of analyzing the genre and the kind of events that it takes place in, you're off to a really good start. And the examples of the new genre are likely to be better than if you didn't analyze the genre. But you should always check your results. You self-check, you check with the artists, you do community checking, you consult with experts, consultant checking. It's important to also remember to make room for culturally appropriate ways of encouraging and improving the creations. Every culture does this differently, and you want to make sure that when you're improving something, you do it in a culturally appropriate way. Well, this 7-step method was not invented when I was in Siberia, and I didn't even think to check things. I was just so happy that they were creating that I didn't even think about having things checked. If I did it today, I would find culturally appropriate ways of checking. But what I'd like for you to do is to talk in your groups about culturally appropriate ways of checking and improving your art in your chosen community. So you can do that now. And here we are at step 7. Yay, the last step. Celebrate and integrate for community. What they did in Siberia after the event was that they went outside the church building and they sang a round dance and a hokai of Thanksgiving to celebrate the festival that they'd had. So it was outside the church in the streets on the Sunday after the event. And I have a video for you of what that looks like. It was long, so I'll just play you a little bit. Here we go. So it went, oh, here we go. It went on and on for probably, I don't know, at least 20 minutes. Irina, who was leading that performance, became an arts leader in the church. She learned how to sing many of the very complicated genres like the epic songs of Alenjo. She continues to be a leader in Saha arts among Christians to this day. And the effects on the church was real great growth. They have even used this circle dance to celebrate baptisms. They can call out the names of the people who had been baptized in this improvised poetry. and it has really contributed to very joy-filled baptism events. Also, the Sakha became an example for other indigenous people groups. At a conference in Central Siberia, I taught on issues of culture and how to contextualize music and arts. And at the end of the conference, on the inspiration of the festival in Yakutia, they held their own Festival of the Nations with original songs from a large variety of the nations represented, which were many, many different people groups. That was very exciting, that the Sakha people could become an example to other groups. So your final task in our practice sessions for this method of arts integration is to brainstorm ways that you might celebrate the sparking of these new arts and incorporate them into the ongoing life of the community. So you can ask questions of your community representative and maybe come together and think about ideas that will really help you to make good use of this new creation, so that it won't just be a one-time thing, but it will be ongoing patterns of creativity in that context. So I'll give you some time to do that now. So here we are. We have done the whole process. We have done step 1, meet a community and its arts. We have worked on specifying kingdom goals, letting the community representative choose the goals that they really feel best represent what their community needs. We've connected those goals to artistic genres, again, chosen by the community representative. The artistic genres that are best for meeting those needs. And then we analyze them. We ask questions about what does this mean and how do you do it? And we've sparked creativity, thought about what kinds of sparking activities can we do. We thought about culturally appropriate ways of improving the results. And we have thought about ways that we can celebrate and integrate for continuity in the community. So it just isn't a one-off bit of creativity, but it keeps on going for a long time into the future. I hope you enjoyed your groups working together with your community representative. I think you'll find that if you were the community representative, it's a lot of work, but it also makes you feel very loved. It makes you feel like people care about your community. And one of the big takeaways from this CLAT method is that as we do this kind of research, it really is the way of showing love to people. And showing love is ministry. So I hope you will remember that research equals love equals ministry. Thanks so much for your time with me. I hope you'll bring this method back into your communities, work with people to have these 7 conversations with them, and that you will eventually be able to someday attend a whole workshop on this, Arts for a Better Future, where you can get really comfortable with using the whole thing, just you and your community. You can do this. It's not too hard. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you again someday.